With all the talk and the focus the past couple of days on Ezekiel Elliott's contract situation and whether or not that was ultimately going to get resolved, you kind of had a deal, a big deal, slip through the cracks a little bit and kind of catch everybody by surprise, I think. And that was the announcement the other day that was made that the Los Angeles Rams had agreed to terms with franchise quarterback Jared Goff on a 4-year, $134 million contract extension. 4 years, $134 million, which they're tacking on to the end of his current rookie contract, which has 2 more years on it, including the 5th-year player option. So that ensures that Jared Goff is going to be the quarterback of the Rams one way or another for the next 5-6 seasons. Man, these dudes getting paid. It's all about timing in the NFL and in sports in general in terms of when you hit the market. And you don't have to be the best to get paid like the best. And Jared Goff is just one of many examples of just that. $110 million of that extension is guaranteed money. That is a lot to pay a guy after 3 years. That is a lot to pay a guy who still, frankly, has quite a bit to prove. So the question ultimately comes up and you ask, was this a mistake for the Rams to give Jared Goff this type of money right now? Is he really worth it? Should they have waited? I guess that's a few questions. And I guess the answer is it kind of depends upon your perspective, frankly. Because when you look at Jared Goff, he was the guy that they traded up big for in 2016, took him number 1 overall. After that wasted rookie season under Jeff Fisher, clearly there was a great rapport there with Jared Goff and head coach Sean McVay, which we cannot oversell enough here. Like, that is critical. As important as it is to have guys that are talented when it comes to the quarterback and head coach relationship, there clearly is a great dynamic there. There's clearly a great chemistry there. They appear to have a great working relationship, and that apparently speaks volumes and carries a lot of weight. So you're talking about Jared Goff, who's only 3 years through his career, maybe his best days in front of him, coming off of a really good 2018 season. I think he threw for like 4,600 yards. He put up some monster numbers. But to me, there's a little bit of concern for a team like the Rams, who are already kind of up against the salary cap, of committing so much money so many years out for a guy who, frankly, still does have a lot to prove. And when you look at his performance in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, and in particular this past season, I would be a little hesitant to be giving elite level money to a guy that has not shown himself to be elite level in elite level type of situations. Wasn't it just a few months ago back in February we were talking about how terrible Jared Goff was in the Super Bowl, and now you're rewarding him by making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? What I find kind of interesting about this dynamic is you're starting to see teams go down a different path in terms of the contract extensions with these young quarterbacks, to where they're not even all the way through their rookie deal. They haven't necessarily proven themselves fully one way or another. Either Jared Goff, due to performance in key moments, Carson Wentz, due to the inability to have the availability, I should say. So you've got these teams now that are trying to stretch these contracts out for years and give these guys a ton of money, but wait for it down the road, which makes me wonder if teams are really concerned what's going to happen in a couple of years, staring down a potential lockout or strike and just how ugly that could be and how much contracts could change afterwards. Maybe there's an element there that players and agents are trying to get the money now because in a couple of years they may also be scared of what is coming down the pike. Either way, it's just interesting to me that the Rams, coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, yes, but not a Super Bowl title, are willing now to go ahead and pay Jared Goff this much money. There is a lot of risk here. Not only are you talking about tying up a pretty substantial portion of your salary cap for the next half decade plus into a guy that has yet to prove himself to be a elite level quarterback in the National Football League, the fact of the matter remains is you don't even know what he's truly going to be. And sure, there is that appeal, the potential, the possibility that he's only 3 years into his career, so he's going to get a whole lot better. And in a few years, that contract might be a non-factor. The contract might appear to be a bit of a bargain. But what if he doesn't get any better? What if he even regresses a little bit? Now all of a sudden you're talking about hanging an albatross of a contract onto your franchise for the next half decade to a guy that's never going to play up to that level. And I'm not here to say at this moment whether Jared Goff is ever going to live up to this contract or not. It's just, to me, it feels like an unnecessary risk at this point, similar to what the Eagles did with Carson Wentz. Now, the difference between Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, I would argue, is that Carson Wentz has way more concerns in terms of his injury history. That really gives me pause in terms of giving a guy that much additional money down the road when he can't make it through an entire season healthy. At least Jared Goff has shown us the ability the past couple of years to make it through a season healthy and be available. That's the key ability to have, is availability. But at some point in time, your level of play has to measure up. And I just don't know at this point what the urgency was to feel the need to have to lock him up. Why not let Jared Goff continue to play under this contract for another year or two? And then when you get down the road, if Jared Goff has established himself as a top 5, top 7, top 10 quarterback in the league, and it's unquestioned, then go ahead and break the bank and give him a massive deal, because I can't imagine, and I say this now in a couple of years, this could look foolish, I can't imagine how much more the market for quarterbacks is going to increase over the next couple of years, because at some point in time, there's going to have to be a drop-off or a jump-off point where the contract values for the quarterbacks are rising at a larger percentage than what the salary cap is each year. You know, you're going to get to a point in time where teams are going to be asking themselves, we're going to start getting into $40 million contracts. If the cap's only around $200 million, do you really want to tie 20% of your salary cap space into one player? It's different in the NBA with a little over $100 million in salary cap space if you tie 30, 35, even $40 million into a guy. Because you're only worried about a roster of 12 to 15 guys. In the NFL, you got 53 to worry about when it comes to the salary cap. I just don't see what the pressing need and urgency was at this point. Because what happens if Jared Goff goes out there and he lays an egg one of the next 2 seasons? You might have potentially still been able to do a long-term deal with him and sign him potentially for a little bit less than what you ultimately gave him. 2 years of pretty good but not exceptional performance, to me, does not mean you should be paying a quarterback elite level money. And maybe that's just me, I don't know, but I don't think it is. I think plenty of other people agree with this assessment. I just don't see the urgency. And what's really starting to concern me now is in another year, when I look ahead to like my team, the Bears, let's say Trubisky goes out in 2019 and throws for around 4,000-ish yards and 28 to 30 touchdowns and maybe 10 to 12 interceptions, so on and so forth. That would be the best season of his career. But it would only really be one even, above average season. I do not want to see the Bears repeating the mistakes of Cutler years gone by and tying a bunch of money long term into a quarterback that hasn't proven himself to be worthy of that level. And I'm not saying at this point whether Trubisky is or he isn't, and that's kind of the point here. You really truly don't know fully what Jared Goff is going to be or not. He could potentially take big steps forward the next couple of years and make me look incredibly foolish. Or he could be that same level of guy that puts up some big numbers against really bad teams and looks like crap against really good teams. He's basically West Coast, slightly more handsome and blonder Stat Padford. Big numbers against bad teams, loses against good teams, mediocre to bad numbers against good teams. Is that Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford? What's the difference? I just don't get the urgency at this point for these teams to sit there. Like, it's one thing for the Cowboys. You got Dak has 1 year left on his deal. I can understand potentially not wanting to go through a whole other season with that contract situation hanging over like a matzo ball and potentially wanting to get that done. But if you don't, you still have the franchise tag. Like, that's the thing to me with Jared Goff. You have the 2019, 2020 seasons. Let him play out his rookie deal. You can always go down the franchise tag route. Teams at this point are out leveraging themselves to pay more money than they need to. And to me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In a couple of years, Jared Goff could render everything that I say completely moot and senseless. I acknowledge that, and I accept that. But the way it stands right now, it just feels like teams are rushing to the altar too quickly with these quarterbacks. You fought to have certain things built into the collective bargaining agreement to begin with. You fought to have a fifth-year player option, to have additional control over a player. You fought to have multiple years of franchise tag ability in order to maintain more team control over a player. Utilize that leverage that you fought for. Stop undercutting it the first chance you get. Otherwise, why even bother having that crap in there? I don't get it. Because think about it like this. Imagine if the Buccaneers or the Titans after the 2017 season had sat there and say, you know what, based off of the situations at the time, that they had seen enough of both Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota respectively, that the Bucs and Titans were going to fork over elite level contracts at the time being maybe 28 to 30 million a year. How foolish would they be looking at that moment 2 years later as both of these guys are going in their fifth year and you really don't know what the hell you're going to get out of these two? Like, if anything, those two guys should serve as a perfect example of why you shouldn't be in such a damn rush and in such a damn hurry to lock up these young quarterbacks that haven't shown just their level of true performance and capability and ability when you don't have to. Another year from now, when you've got Mahomes and Watson 3 years through their career, based off of the teams and the situations and their level of performance, you can make the argument. You can justify that. But imagine if the Bucs and the Titans had done this with Winston and Mariota, how much people would already be questioning the decisions. That's my fear for the Rams and the Eagles too, and other teams doing this, is you're locking yourself up for a lot of years down the road for guys, and maybe it pays off, but you're taking an awful big chance, and to me at this point, a really unnecessary chance without a ton of real payoff here.